You didn't become cluttered because you were careless or even sentimental. You became cluttered because life changed, and you adapted, quickly, without applause. When standing too long starts to ache, when reaching the second shelf feels like a balancing act, when bending to grab one thing leaves your knees throbbing, you stop doing what used to be simple. You adjust. You leave things where they're easier to reach. You pile them up so you don't have to go back and forth. You tell yourself it's temporary. But over time, those little adjustments, those clever workarounds, become permanent patterns. Quiet ones. Ones no one notices. And then one day, you look around and wonder why your home doesn't feel like your own anymore. It's not messy. It's just not peaceful. Because what started as survival has become silent chaos. But here's the truth, this isn't about clearing out closets or throwing away sentimental things. This is about recognizing the 10 invisible habits you picked up while life was demanding too much from your body, and gently fixing them. Because your home isn't failing you. It's just following your lead. So today, let's take back that lead. Let's make your home feel like it's working for you again. If you've been making do for too long, like this video and subscribe, because you deserve more than just getting by. You deserve ease. You deserve space that gives back. Jessa Aldridge is 78. A retired office clerk with a no-nonsense spirit and a lifetime of efficiency behind her. She wasn't the type to hoard or collect junk. She didn't have closets bursting open or piles stacked to the ceiling. In fact, most visitors would say her home looked fine, tidy, lived in, nothing outrageous. But something felt off. And Jessa felt it every morning. It started small. Her knees began protesting whenever she bent down to grab pots from the lower cabinet. So she began leaving one pan out on the stovetop, then another. Reaching for mugs in the upper shelves triggered shoulder aches, so she moved her favorite cup to the counter. Her spine didn't like twisting anymore, so she stopped putting the laundry basket back in the utility closet. Instead, she left it in the hallway, right next to the door, always ready, always in the way. None of it was a decision she remembered making. There was no big moment where she said, "I'm giving up." These weren't careless habits. They were adjustments. Smart ones, actually. Survival-based, energy-saving, pain-avoiding. They helped in the moment. But over time, her house began to shift around her, not in the way it looked, but in the way it functioned. The kitchen that once brought her peace now felt cramped. The hallway narrowed with baskets and step stools. Her bedroom turned into a workspace for sorting medications, keeping bills within reach, and setting up a chair for clothes she no longer folded. She didn't feel in control anymore. She felt like she was always navigating obstacles she'd created, without meaning to. And that's the truth no one talks about. Aging doesn't just change your health or your routine. It quietly changes your relationship with your space. Not with clutter in the traditional sense, but with the ways you begin to live around difficulty. And if no one points it out, those just-for-now adjustments become permanent setups. Jessa wasn't messy. She was simply adapting. And her home was silently adapting, too, into something that no longer felt like hers. Bad habit 1. Staging items in the hallway for later tasks. Jessa didn't mean to turn her hallway into a collection point. It just started happening. At first, it was a single basket of folded clothes she left near the bedroom door. She told herself she'd take it in later, after her knees had rested, or once she wasn't so tired. Then came the grocery bags. Then the reusable water jugs she refilled once a week. Before long, the hallway became a series of little stations, like a trail of things on the way to somewhere. What made it hard to notice was that each item had a reason to be there. It wasn't junk. It wasn't forgotten. It was just paused. In transition. Temporary. But temporary becomes permanent when there's no energy or system to finish the task. Jessa didn't call it clutter. She called it staging. It was her way of prepping, not procrastinating. But with time, she realized something important. The hallway no longer felt like space. It felt like storage. She walked sideways to avoid bumping baskets. She stopped vacuuming there altogether. The walls closed in, not from new furniture, but from unfinished decisions that lined the floor. This is a habit many seniors fall into without realizing it. As physical energy changes, carrying everything at once is no longer practical. So we split tasks. We do it in shifts. But when there's no follow-up plan, those shift points turn into holding zones, zones that slowly swallow up open space and visual calm. Here's the fix. Instead of placing things on the floor for later, use a rolling utility cart or a waist-level shelf at the source. For example, if you fold laundry in the living room, the basket should live there, not in the hallway. If groceries are staged before being put away, use a portable table or cart near the entry, then roll it where it needs to go. And here's the secret benefit. When you lift the clutter off the floor, your body doesn't just thank you, your eyes and your mind do too. Hallways are meant to move you forward, not hold you back with things you meant to finish yesterday. Jessa didn't need to declutter the hallway. She needed to remove the habit that turned it into a landing strip. Once she did, the space felt like hers again, not a reminder of what she hadn't done yet. Bad habit 2. Keeping frequently used items on the countertop. For years, Jessa had prided herself on her tidy kitchen. Counters clear. Everything in its place. But as time passed, she noticed a shift, not in her standards, but in her habits. The coffee mug she used every morning stopped going back in the cabinet. The frying pan lived permanently on the stove, even after it was washed. Her daily pills stayed lined up by the toaster, even though she had an organizer in the drawer below. If anyone asked, she'd say it was just more convenient. But the truth was deeper. Her body was changing, and she was quietly adjusting to it. Bending to grab a pan from a lower drawer caused a pull in her lower back. Reaching into overhead cabinets tightened her shoulders in a way that lingered for hours. So she adapted. She placed things where she could reach them without pain. It made sense in the moment. It still does for many people. But here's what surprised her. Over time, her kitchen started to feel stressful. Not messy. Not dirty. Just crowded. There was no breathing space. No visual calm. No clear surfaces. It was like the kitchen was always in use, even when she wasn't using it. That's the subtle problem with this habit. When frequently used items stay out all the time, your home starts looking like it's always mid-task. And that background noise, even when everything is technically clean, builds tension. It makes it harder to relax, to feel done. Here's the fix. Instead of fighting your body to keep things in their traditional homes, rebuild your storage logic. Find one drawer or cabinet that sits waist-high, where no reaching or bending is required. Turn that into your daily drawer. It might mean moving plates out of the high cupboard and putting them in a drawer that used to hold linens. It might mean converting part of your TV stand into a supplement shelf if that's closer to where you take them. Let tradition go. Let function lead. Your home isn't a museum. It's a tool for your current life. When Jessa finally swapped locations, not adding or removing, just reassigning, she didn't lose control. She regained it. Her counters cleared. Her space breathed. And so did she. Bad habit 3. Multiplying tools to avoid movement. Jessa didn't set out to clutter her home with duplicates. She simply didn't want to make extra trips. At first, it seemed harmless. She bought a second pair of scissors for the bedroom, so she wouldn't have to go back to the kitchen drawer. Then she added another pill organizer for the bathroom, even though she already had one in her nightstand. A second pair of reading glasses for the living room. An extra tissue box for the hallway table. It wasn't about excess, it was about energy. When you're over 60, moving from room to room can feel different. Your knees don't always cooperate. Your balance isn't what it used to be, especially late in the day. So the logic was simple: place things where you use them most. But over time, that well-meaning habit led to something else entirely. There were scissors in 3 rooms, but she couldn't find a pair when she needed them. There were sticky notes in 5 drawers, but none of them had what she wrote last week. Her home wasn't cluttered with junk. It was cluttered with confusion. What Jessa didn't realize at first was that these duplicates were silently scattering her focus. She spent more time hunting than doing. More time organizing scattered tools than completing simple tasks. And every time she noticed another pair of something she forgot she bought, She felt just a little more disoriented. This is a clutter habit that creeps in with the best of intentions. You're trying to make life easier, but you end up spreading your essentials so thin across the house that you never feel truly ready in any room. Here's the fix. Instead of duplicating, consolidate and mobilize. Create small, lightweight kits that follow you. One for medications, pill box, lotion, thermometer, pen and pad. One for paperwork, glasses, mail opener, notepad, stamps. Use a handled basket, a canvas tote, even a rolling cart if you prefer. The key is containment and portability. When you move, your kit moves with you. No duplication, no searching, no mental fog. Jessa downsized from 6 different just-in-case setups to 3 intentional toolkits. Now, everything she needs is together. Easy to carry. Easy to return. Less walking. Less repeating. Less forgetting. She didn't get rid of her tools. She just stopped spreading herself too thin. Bad habit 4. Turning chairs and tables into holding stations. It didn't happen overnight. Jessa didn't decide one day, this chair will now hold everything I don't want to deal with. It started with a coat. One she planned to hang up later. Then came the canvas tote from her last grocery trip, still half full. Then the unopened mail. Then a reusable bag, then 2, then a scarf draped on top. And suddenly, a perfectly good chair near the entryway disappeared, under layers of items she never intended to keep there. But here's what made it tricky, nothing about it felt messy. The bags weren't torn. The coat was clean. The chair itself was nice. And she told herself it was temporary. A staging area. A rest stop. But the problem wasn't in what the chair was holding, it was in what it wasn't doing anymore. It wasn't a chair. It had become a shelf. A catch-all. A permission slip to delay action. And it wasn't just the chair. The small table by the hallway became a holding pen for coupons and flyers. The stool near the back door held gardening gloves she hadn't used in a month. Flat surfaces and empty seats became silent invitations. Because when something can hold stuff, eventually, it will, especially when you're trying to avoid bending, walking, or thinking about one more thing. For older adults, this habit isn't laziness. It's accommodation. Your body tells you to delay a movement. So you obey. You tell yourself it's just for today. But over time, those today moments become routines, and routines become clutter you don't recognize because it feels earned. Here's the fix. Remove the temptation. Chairs that aren't regularly used for sitting? Relocate them. Or place something on them that clearly signals they're not meant to hold piles, like a plant or a decorative cushion that isn't easy to throw aside. Tables that become clutter traps? Empty them completely and leave them that way on purpose. Even better, give every table one defined role. 1. Not 3. Not 5. Mail table. Key table. Lamp table. Not all 3 in one. Jessa finally moved her hallway chair to her bedroom corner, where she actually used it again, to read. And in its place? Nothing. Just floor space. What she gained wasn't just a cleaner entry. She regained the habit of completing actions, not staging them. Because when something can sit, clutter will sit too. And when the furniture goes back to serving you, so does the space around it. Bad habit 5. Delaying trash decisions because of energy loss. For Jessa, trash wasn't a big problem. It was a tiny, recurring one. She never thought twice about leaving an empty food container by the sink. She intended to rinse it, break it down, and toss it in the recycling later. She always meant to shred those old bills on the kitchen table, once she had the energy. But later didn't always come. And by the end of the week, the small delays turned into visual clutter, piles that whispered, "You're falling behind," even when she wasn't. The truth is, trash decisions aren't always about willpower or mess. They're often about energy, and how limited it becomes with age. For older adults, the simple act of standing to walk across the room and toss something out becomes something you weigh. Do I feel steady enough? Do I want to stand again? Can it wait? So it does. Items get set down for now, on counters, side tables, cabinet tops. Not because they are important, but because dealing with them costs more than you can give in that moment. And the more often that moment repeats, the more normal it becomes to leave things halfway to done. What Jessa didn't realize was that her home wasn't filling with trash. It was filling with pending actions. Little things that needed one more step, but never got it. And it wasn't the size of the pile that weighed her down. It was the frequency of the reminder. Here's the fix: remove the barrier. If the trash can is too far, too deep, too heavy, or too low, you won't use it consistently. So change your environment instead of fighting your body. Place mini trash bins or shred-ready envelopes in the areas where decisions are made. Not where they are supposed to go, but where the items actually land. A small waste basket near the kitchen table. A lined bin beside the bathroom sink. A small shred bag by the nightstand if that's where you open your mail. None of these need to be large or ugly, just present, accessible, and lightweight. It's not about being messy. It's about being realistic. When your physical energy decreases, your system needs to work harder for you. Once Jessa stopped trying to force old routines and started building a home that matched her body's pace, she noticed something subtle but powerful. The piles stopped forming. And she stopped feeling like her home was waiting on her. It finally moved with her again. Bad habit 6. Leaving items at mid-height to avoid lifting or bending. Jessa never thought of herself as disorganized. She knew where everything was. Her cereal was on top of the dryer, her walking shoes sat neatly on the third stair step, and her coffee filters rested on top of the microwave in a stack she refilled every 2 weeks. To her, it wasn't clutter. It was accessibility. But gradually, her home started to feel tight. Not because she had too much stuff, but because it was everywhere. In plain sight. In arm's reach. And always just there. Here's what she, and many others, don't realize. Mid-height surfaces become default storage zones when bending low or reaching high becomes physically uncomfortable. It's not a conscious decision. You stop using bottom cabinets because your hips lock up when you squat. You avoid high shelves because you've lost confidence in your balance. And so, you begin to place things on the dryer, the countertop, the back of chairs, and stair steps. Not because that's where they belong, but because that's where your body says stop. And it works, until it doesn't. Until you trip on the shoes you left on the steps. Until the microwave top becomes visually exhausting. Until every surface in your home becomes a holding zone, and walking through it feels like navigating a maze you accidentally built. This is how clutter forms in homes that were once clear and controlled, not from carelessness, but from adaptation. And the longer it goes unrecognized, the more those surfaces become permanent landing zones. The cereal never makes it back to the pantry. The shoes never reach the closet. The coffee filters stay out because they always have. Here's the fix: build systems that work at your height. Install or repurpose pull-out trays, open bins, and waist-high containers in the rooms where your routines happen most. Place cereal in a clear pull-out drawer you can reach without strain. Use stair baskets for shoes, but with lids and defined rules. Add a countertop bin with divided sections for lightweight, daily use items, so nothing floats freely. When everything has a designated, reachable place, you'll stop relying on surface-level decisions. You'll feel less visual pressure, less tripping risk, and more flow. Jessa didn't have to become more organized, she had to reorganize around the way she moved today. Once she did, the piles disappeared. The surfaces cleared. And the maze she'd unknowingly created? It opened back into a home that worked with her, not against her. Bad habit 7. Turning the floor into a storage zone without realizing it. Jessa didn't think twice about tucking things onto the floor. A tote bag under the dining table. A case of bottled water beside the recliner. A reusable grocery sack slid against the wall by the kitchen island. It all felt temporary. Practical. Out of the way. She told herself, it's easier here. And in the moment, it was. The truth is, using the floor for storage isn't about laziness. It's about accessibility. When lifting something onto a shelf feels risky, and crouching to slide it into a cabinet brings back pain, the floor starts looking like a smart solution. Why bend, lift, or stretch when you can just place? But here's the subtle danger: what begins as a convenience becomes invisible. Jessa didn't see the water case anymore. It had been there for weeks. She didn't notice the tote bag until she tripped on the strap one morning and stumbled into the table. The floor invites clutter slowly. You don't wake up to a messy house. You wake up to a house full of workarounds, things parked just for now that silently stay for months. And over time, that creates two big problems. 1. Safety. Floor storage becomes a physical hazard, especially when navigating at night, during a dizzy spell, or while carrying something. 2. Stress. You may not label it as clutter, but your mind still processes visual chaos. Items that live where they don't belong send constant low-level signals. This is unfinished. Here's the fix. Stop using the floor as a parking lot. Build up, not out. Create vertical storage solutions that are easy to access without bending or stretching. Use wall-mounted baskets for daily use items like gloves, keys, or light gear. Install slim hooks on the backs of doors for reusable bags and folding stools. Place a narrow rolling cart beside your chair for water, snacks, or reading materials. These carts can move with you and tuck away when not in use. Even in tight spaces, corner shelves or standing vertical cubbies can hold what used to sit on the floor. The goal isn't to make things hard to reach, it's to stop defaulting to the floor as a solution. Because what's easy today can cause injury tomorrow. And what feels out of the way can slowly fill up the very space you need to move freely. Once Jessa raised just a few daily use items off the floor, her walkways cleared, literally and mentally. No more stepping over things. No more quiet guilt. No more risk hidden in plain sight. She didn't declutter by getting rid of things. She decluttered by lifting them into alignment with her life now. Bad habit 8. Letting outdated routines decide object placement. Jessa's kitchen looked organized. Clean counters. Neatly labeled containers. But behind the doors? A different story. The pots she used once a year were still tucked in the lowest cabinet, just like they'd always been. The cleaning sprays and sponges stayed under the sink, even though kneeling to reach them had become painful. She wasn't using them as often anymore. But they hadn't moved. Why? Because that's where they had always gone. This is a habit most people over 60 carry without even noticing, sticking to old object placements long after the body has changed. Not out of stubbornness, but because you're still living in a layout designed for who you used to be. At 45, kneeling wasn't a problem. At 65, maybe it just took a little longer. But at 74? Jessa noticed herself avoiding those cabinets completely. And what's worse, she started avoiding the tasks tied to them. The mop sat untouched because bending to grab it meant leaning into a cabinet that made her back twinge. The large baking pan hadn't seen daylight in months, not because she stopped baking, but because retrieving it required too much twisting. And so, she told herself she was slowing down. But in truth, her home was set up for a body she no longer lived in. That's the invisible clutter, the mental roadblocks and friction points created by outdated routines. The places where useful things become functionally useless because of where they live. Clutter isn't just piles. Sometimes, it's perfectly good items that your current body can't comfortably reach. Here's the fix. Reassess every routine space based on accessibility, not tradition. Start with the question, would I choose to keep this here today if I were setting up from scratch? Move daily use items to waist-level cabinets or drawers. Store infrequent tools higher, not because they are less valuable, but because they require less frequent bending. And most importantly, stop letting guilt or nostalgia trap items in places that no longer serve your mobility. Jessa eventually cleared the space under her sink and used a small cart beside her pantry for cleaning supplies instead, one she could access while standing upright. She swapped her heavy cast iron pan from the low cabinet to an open shelf she could see without bending. No new purchases. No big renovations. Just a new agreement with her home. I'll stop pretending I move like I used to, and you'll stop hiding what I need. And once that shift happened, everything became easier, not because her body got younger, but because her home finally caught up. Bad habit 9. Turning every flat surface into an anchor point. Jessa never thought of herself as someone who left things lying around. She liked her home to look orderly. She took pride in how it felt. But slowly, flat surfaces throughout the house started collecting things, not because she stopped caring, but because she started needing to stop more often. When fatigue set in, she simply placed things wherever she was. A grocery bag on the hallway table because it was closer than the pantry. A newspaper on the kitchen island because standing at the counter too long made her legs ache. A package of paper towels on top of the dryer, still in the plastic wrap, because she didn't feel steady enough to put them away just yet. And one by one, these surfaces became invisible shelves, temporary resting spots that quietly became permanent fixtures. This is a habit that sneaks in quietly after 60. It's not clutter driven by chaos. It's clutter driven by fatigue. Your body asks you to stop, to rest, to pause, and so you do. But the items in your hands pause with you. And if there's a flat surface nearby, that's where they stay. Not because you've forgotten them. Because finishing the task feels like too much at that moment. Over time, these unplanned resting points become part of the routine. The kitchen island is no longer a space for preparing meals. It's a station for unopened mail, half-read magazines, and errands not yet completed. The hallway table becomes a dumping zone for anything you don't want to carry one more step. And the surfaces that once made your home feel open now quietly remind you of what's not done yet. Here's the fix: interrupt the pattern, visually and mentally. Cover the surfaces you tend to clutter with something that breaks the flow. A decorative cloth, a centerpiece bowl, even a framed photo. Not for decoration, but for interruption. Because when a surface looks intentional, your brain hesitates before piling on. Another tip: assign one single purpose to each flat space. If the hallway table is for keys, then nothing else belongs there. If the kitchen island is for food prep, clear it daily, even if it's just symbolic. And if your dryer top has become your backup pantry, ask yourself, is it storage, or is it just convenient procrastination? Jessa eventually placed a shallow basket on her hallway table, just big enough for one day's worth of mail. Everything else got sorted, tossed, or dealt with. Her kitchen island got a fresh runner and a small plant, nothing fancy, but just enough to remind her, this space has a job, and it's not to hold what I'm too tired to finish. And slowly, the surfaces cleared, not because she pushed harder, but because she made it easier to not pile. That's the real trick: making pause points into prompts for completion, not containers for delay. Bad habit 10. Letting workarounds become permanent fixtures. Jessa didn't like clutter, but she did like convenience. So when her knees started bothering her, she moved the vacuum into the corner of the living room, just until she could remember to run it during the week. Then, one night after a rough sleep, she brought a snack tray into the den, so she wouldn't have to go back and forth to the kitchen. She meant to put it back. But she didn't. Weeks passed. Then months. The vacuum never returned to the closet. The snack tray stayed by the recliner, neatly stacked with crackers, tissues, and half-used remote batteries. What began as a temporary adjustment, just to make life easier, became part of the room's layout. Not intentionally, but gradually, and without permission. And that's how it happens for so many people. Especially after 60, when energy shifts, reflexes slow, and the body starts to demand new routines. You begin creating little workarounds, practical solutions for discomfort, fatigue, or forgetfulness. You leave the mail by the TV so you'll deal with it after your show. You keep the walking cane propped against the bathroom wall instead of putting it away. You store medication on the end table because you're more likely to take it if it's right there. These are all smart in the moment. But the danger comes when the moment never ends. When just for now becomes just always. And suddenly, every room in your home starts looking like it's waiting on something. Waiting to be cleaned, sorted, returned, dealt with. That's when the emotional weight sets in. Because even if it's tidy, your home begins to whisper that nothing is ever quite finished. It creates a loop, small unresolved tasks tucked into every corner, each one reminding you of a body that needs help, a mind that's tired, and a space that doesn't reset. Here's the fix: implement a 7-day review rule. If any object has been sitting out temporarily for more than a week, it needs one of two things: a permanent, functional home that fits your current routine, or a graceful exit from your space altogether. Ask yourself, is this helping me, Or am I now working around the workaround? Is it still serving a purpose, or has it become background noise? Jessa eventually gave the vacuum its own upright stand in a closet she could access without stooping. She replaced the snack tray with a narrow, lidded container that fit beside her chair but didn't become visual clutter. She didn't remove the convenience. She simply upgraded the intention behind it. Because when a workaround stays too long, it stops serving you, and starts shaping a version of your home that no longer reflects what you need. And sometimes, reclaiming peace is as simple as reviewing what you stopped noticing. Jessa didn't need to part with the past. She didn't need to toss her keepsakes or empty every shelf. What she really needed was to recognize the habits that quietly crept in, not out of neglect, but out of necessity. Habits formed during moments when her energy dipped, her joints ached, or her balance wavered. They weren't mistakes. They were responses. Practical ones. But over time, those responses became patterns, and those patterns began shaping a home that no longer served her. She never intended for her hallway to become a drop zone. She didn't plan for her kitchen to turn into a storage hub. She wasn't careless, she was tired. And instead of stopping to rebuild the way her home functioned, she did what most of us do: she made do. Until making do became the default. Until every shortcut became a silent wait. But here's the part that matters. When she finally slowed down to look at how she was moving through her home, what she reached for, what she avoided, what she left undone, she saw the truth. It wasn't the house that needed to change. It was the relationship she had with it. One built around her 45-year-old body, not her 78-year-old reality. One that didn't account for how much her needs had shifted, and how little her setup had. Once Jessa identified those 10 invisible habits, not one of them about mess or hoarding, she didn't just make space on her counters. She made space in her day. She stopped tripping over things. Stopped losing time to small frustrations. And most of all, she stopped blaming herself. Because clutter isn't always about things. Sometimes it's about coping strategies that stayed longer than they were ever meant to. If even one of these habits felt familiar, let me tell you, this isn't about failure. It's about becoming aware. You didn't fall behind. You adjusted. But now, you get to adjust back, on your terms. So if you're ready to stop getting by and start feeling at home again, like this video. Share it with someone else who's been adapting silently for years. And subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, where we don't just talk about decluttering. We talk about real life, the kind that shifts slowly and powerfully when you finally see what's been getting in the way.